For the majority of the world, a birthday is a non-negotiable celebration of existence, a day filled with social validation, public recognition, and the ritualistic gathering of friends and family. Yet, for a significant and often misunderstood demographic of adults, the arrival of this date triggers an immediate urge to retract from the world and let the 24-hour cycle pass in total silence. They aren't simply being difficult, acting like a Grinch, or seeking attention through their absence. They are often navigating deep-seated psychological patterns that make celebration feel like an active threat. Psychology shows that this avoidance isn't a personality flaw, but rather a protective response to internal stressors like social anxiety, complex trauma history, or existential dread. By examining these behaviors through a clinical lens, we can move past superficial judgment and understand the genuine discomfort that comes from being placed in a mandatory social spotlight. Today, we are profiling 12 specific psychological reasons and recurring patterns that explain why people choose to opt out of their own birthday celebrations. Each point reveals how the human brain processes self-worth, the passage of time, and the weight of societal expectations in a way that differs fundamentally from the cultural norm. 1. The first and perhaps most prevalent pattern is driven by a phenomenon that social psychology calls the spotlight effect. This cognitive bias causes individuals to significantly overestimate how much others are actually noticing, evaluating, and judging their appearance or their social behavior. On a birthday, this sensation isn't just a mental bias. It becomes an objective reality where the individual is the explicit, unavoidable focus of every room they enter and every message they receive. For those with high social sensitivity, this forced attention feels less like a heartwarming gift and more like a psychological interrogation or an intrusive public performance. They may worry obsessively about performing, the correct level of gratitude, or whether they look happy enough to satisfy the expectations of their guests. Cognitive psychology suggests that the sheer mental energy required to sustain this public persona for hours is simply too high of a metabolic and emotional cost to pay. The real-life consequence is a total withdrawal from the day, as staying under the radar is the only way to deactivate the overwhelming feeling of being watched. By refusing to acknowledge the date, they effectively shut off the spotlight, reclaiming a sense of internal peace that a party would otherwise destroy. 2. Dismissive-Avoidant Attachment often plays a silent role in birthday avoidance. Psychology shows that these individuals learned early that their needs might go unmet. If childhood milestones were ignored, the adult brain develops a protective cynicism. They minimize the importance of the day to prevent the pain of disappointment. By claiming the day doesn't matter, they maintain a sense of emotional safety. Research suggests this is a subconscious way to avoid relying on others for joy. The real-life consequence is a total rejection of any celebration involving emotional vulnerability. They would rather be alone than risk the vulnerability of being celebrated. 3. For many, a birthday is less a celebration and more a jarring reminder of mortality. Cognitive psychology calls this mortality salience, where the reality of death becomes unavoidable. Research suggests that birthdays act as a temporary breakdown of terror management theory. Normally, we use cultural rituals to buffer the anxiety of our finite existence. But when the calendar turns, the arithmetic of aging becomes too loud to ignore. The psychological weight of another year past triggers a defensive retreat into silence. Psychology shows that ignoring the date is often a way to pause the existential clock. The real-life consequence is an annual period of deep introspection or sudden existential dread. By opting out of the party, they are effectively opting out of the countdown. 4. For many, a birthday acts as a cold audit of the social clock. Developmental psychology describes the social clock as a cultural timeline for major life achievements. When we reach a new age, we instinctively measure our progress against our peers. Research suggests that those who feel behind experience intense shame during these milestones. The birthday party becomes a stage where they must explain their perceived lack of progress. Cognitive psychology calls this comparative failure, where the gap between reality and expectation causes distress. To avoid the judgment of others, they choose to delete the day from the social calendar. The real-life consequence is a total withdrawal from community rituals to protect their self-esteem. By not celebrating, they avoid the painful questions about why they haven't met certain goals yet. 5. Hyperindependence is a common trait among those who refuse to acknowledge their birthday. Psychology shows that hyperindependence often develops as a trauma response to unreliable support systems. These individuals view being celebrated as a loss of control or autonomy. Accepting gifts and attention creates a perceived sense of emotional debt they don't want to carry. Cognitive psychology suggests they equate being a recipient with being weak or dependent. If you are the center of a party, you are vulnerable to the whims of the guests. The real-life consequence is a rigid refusal to let anyone provide for them, even for one day. By skipping the celebration, they maintain their identity as someone who needs absolutely nothing from anyone. 6. Many people avoid their birthday because they find the emotional labor of being a host exhausting. Psychology shows that being the center of attention often requires a constant social mask. They feel responsible for ensuring every guest is having a good time at their party. Cognitive psychology suggests this leads to decision fatigue and high levels of cortisol. Instead of enjoying the day, they are performing a role to meet societal expectations. The real-life consequence is that the celebration feels like a grueling workday rather than a gift. By opting out, they reclaim their energy and avoid the drain of performative joy. They prioritize internal peace over the external performance of being the happy birthday person. 7. For some, the traditional birthday celebration triggers a profound sense of cognitive dissonance. Psychology shows that we feel most comfortable when external feedback matches our internal self-concept. If a person struggles with low self-worth, high levels of praise can feel fraudulent or threatening. Cognitive psychology calls this self-verification theory, where we seek to confirm our existing beliefs about ourselves. When friends shower them with love, it creates a painful tension between the praise and their inner critic. They may feel like an imposter, simply waiting for the crowd to realize they are unworthy of the attention. The real-life consequence is a reflexive desire to cancel plans to avoid the discomfort of being seen positively. By staying home, they protect themselves from the overwhelming noise of a love they haven't yet learned to accept. 8. Some individuals opt out of birthdays as a direct expression of psychological reactance. Psychology shows that when people feel their freedom of choice is threatened, they rebel. They view the societal expectation to be happy on a specific day as an unwanted command. Research suggests that forced traditions can trigger a desire to do the exact opposite. By refusing to celebrate, they are reclaiming their right to define what days are significant. The real-life consequence is a perceived coldness toward those who try to enforce the tradition. They may see birthday wishes not as kindness, but as an attempt to make them conform. Ultimately, their silence is a protective measure for their personal sense of agency. 9. For many neurodivergent individuals, a birthday celebration is a literal sensory minefield. Psychology shows that high arousal environments can quickly lead to physiological overstimulation. The combination of loud music, multiple conversations, and unpredictable physical touch is overwhelming. Cognitive psychology suggests that managing these inputs leaves zero energy for actual social enjoyment. The person isn't being antisocial. Their brain is simply working overtime to process the environment. The real-life consequence is an immediate need for total isolation to prevent a sensory meltdown. By skipping the party, they are practicing essential self-regulation and protecting their mental health. They choose the silence of a normal day over the painful noise of a forced celebration. 10. The birthday blues describe a specific clinical discrepancy between expected joy and actual emotional reality. Research suggests that the cultural pressure to be happy can ironically trigger depressive symptoms. Psychology shows that high expectations create a fragile emotional state where small disappointments feel magnified. When the day arrives, the lack of a magical feeling causes a sense of profound failure. Cognitive psychology calls this an effective forecasting error, where we misjudge our future emotional states. The person avoids the celebration because the contrast between the party and their mood is too painful. The real-life consequence is an annual period of low mood that dampens their social connections. By treating the day like any other, they neutralize the pressure to perform an artificial happiness. 11. For many who avoid their birthday, the date functions as a trauma anniversary. Psychology shows that the body often stores memories of past pain even if the mind tries to forget. If a traumatic event occurred on or near a birthday, the date triggers a nervous system response. Research suggests this is part of the body's predictive coding to prepare for recurring threats. The individual may feel sudden dread or physical fatigue without understanding the immediate cause. Cognitive psychology calls this the anniversary effect, where symptoms peak during specific times of the year. The real-life consequence is an instinctive withdrawal from celebration to manage this internal distress. By ignoring the day, they attempt to bypass the biological trigger and maintain emotional stability. 12. Finally, many avoid birthdays due to high levels of rejection sensitivity. Psychology shows that for these individuals, a party is not a gift, but a high-stakes social test. They suffer from the terrifying thought that no one will show up to celebrate them. Cognitive psychology suggests this stems from an insecure internal working model of relationships. To them, a low turnout is a definitive, public proof of their lack of value. The psychological cost of a potential failed party is simply too high to risk. The real-life consequence is a habit of preemptive rejection where they cancel before others can. By never inviting anyone, they ensure that they can never be truly disappointed. It is a strategy of control, choosing the certainty of solitude over the gamble of belonging. Ultimately, the decision to skip a birthday is rarely about being a spoilsport or a cynic. Psychology shows that these behaviors are often deeply rooted protective mechanisms. Whether it is managing sensory overload or protecting one's self-worth, the choice is functional. Respecting these boundaries is a vital part of maintaining healthy social connections. Research suggests that forcing a celebration on someone who is avoidant only increases their distress. Acceptance allows the individual to navigate their milestone at a pace that feels authentic. There is no correct way to exist within time or to mark the passing of a year. Remember, psychology makes one thing clear: your comfort and mental safety are more important than any tradition.